How's it going guys, Kris here with another Battlefield 5 gun guide for you today, and in this one we're going to be taking a look at the KARABIN 1938M, a semi-automatic rifle for the assault class which came along in Tides of War Chapter 4. So the KARABIN 1938M, aka the WZ-38M, was a self-loading rifle from Poland, designed in the mid-1930s by a guy called Józef Mareczek, hence why there's a letter M at the end of the gun's name to signify its designer. He sent a prototype of the rifle off for trials in 1934 and ended up winning along with two other designs, though it came in third place, which Mareczek wasn't totally satisfied with. Although compelled to fix and improve the weapon, he was designing an anti-tank rifle around the same time, which took priority, and prevented him from working on that semi-auto prototype, which he did eventually go back to, but pretty much right at the end of the trial period. Despite having a really limited amount of time to redesign the rifle, the outcome ended up being pretty good, with the Polish military taking interest and qualifying the gun for further testing, along with troop trials in 1939. Though of course, later on that year, World War II started with the German invasion of Poland, halting any further development and production of the gun, with only about 150 units being made prior to this point. It's unclear whether or not these were ever used by the Polish army during the invasion, though at least one example of the rifle's usage was recorded, and bizarrely, it was in the hands of the gun's designer himself, Mareczek, who is said to have fired the gun from a train window to bring down a low-flying German plane, by taking out the gunner and wounding the pilot, forcing it to land. In Battlefield 5, the KARABIN 38M's got a pretty solid damage profile, dishing out a maximum of 45 up to the range of 25 meters, which then declines over distance from this point, eventually reaching that minimum damage figure of 28 at the range of 150 meters and beyond. Much like some of the other heavier hitting semi-auto rifles in the assault class, this allows the rifle to take down players in just 3 shots up to 100 meters, making it quite strong over a decent distance, pretty much covering the entire mid-range span. Though it will drop to a 4-bullet kill beyond 100 meters, lowering that lethality and increasing the time to kill a bit against players far away beyond this point. With a fire rate of 300 RPM, this essentially gives the KARABIN the exact same kill times as the BF5, which also shares the same damage profile too, along with that fire rate, which isn't exactly a brilliant speed within earlier ranges, generally being a fair bit slower than a lot of the other guns on offer, though still not the slowest of the bunch at least. So although the damage is quite high, this is offset by the gun's slower than average fire rate, generally making it less effective within earlier ranges where it might often struggle to compete with other, quicker firing weapons, though better suited over medium distances instead, where you can still kill in 3 shots, without being in as much danger. With a vertical recoil value of 1.25, this is sort of in the middle of the pack regarding the gun's kick, not being particularly high or awkward to control, though still being beaten by quite a few of its alternatives. This gives it a fairly similar recoil pattern to the MAZ-44, perhaps being slightly less accurate when you're firing at the gun's maximum rate, due to it having a higher increased value per shot, though overall it's generally quite easy to control, especially when you compare it to some of the other heavy hitting semi-auto rifles, like the BF5, which shares a lot of the same stats. This might just make the KARABIN slightly better optimised for engaging players further away as a result, with recoil being more stable, allowing you to stay on target better when tapping the trigger quickly. With the KARABIN also having access to the recoil buffer Specialization 2, this is going to drop that kick down to the same value as the M1941, generally giving the gun a pretty decent level of precision, helping to cut down kill times over range due to you not having to account for the weapon's kick so much after every shot. Bullet speed is fairly average, with a muzzle velocity of 760 meters per second, though over medium ranges this should be ample for most gunfights. Though if you are struggling to lead moving targets further away, then the high velocity bullet spec will probably make life a little easier for you. Having a 10 round ammo capacity comprised of 2 5-round stripper clips, the KARABIN 38M's got a fairly standard mag size compared to other semi-auto rifles, with no way to increase this capacity, unlike some of the others which have access to alternate magazine choices. This technically allows you to take down up to 3 players with full health within 100 meters, leaving you with a bullet to spare. Though because the gun doesn't have access to detachable mags, like a lot of the other assault class semi-automatics, you are going to have to rely on the more conventional method of topping that internal magazine up with clips and individual cartridges, generally making reload speeds less consistent and often slightly longer. Tactical reloads can take anywhere between 3 seconds to 6.37 seconds, load in a single clip and 4 rounds one by one for the latter. To perform a full fat reload with 2 clips, it's going to take 4.37 seconds, which isn't particularly terrible, but still pretty lengthy compared to other rifles using those detachable magazines. Thankfully, to make life a little bit easier for you, the Karabin does have access to the quick reload spec, decreasing these times by 15% and making them a tad more manageable. Though not having access to either the extended or detachable mags does hinder the gun's reliability, limiting its effectiveness within shorter sight lines when you need to stay engaged in the action, to take on several enemies one after the other in a short space of time. Taking a look at those specializations next, the KARABIN 1938M's got access to most of the same things as the BF5, with quick aim at the top left, increasing ADS speed, and high velocity bullets on the top right, giving bullet speed a bit of a boost. You can't really go wrong with either of these two, though I tend to prefer using high velocity bullets, just to help with the gun's precision over range, where it's generally a bit better suited. In the middle section, we've got enhanced grips along with the quick reload on the left, tightening up hipfire spread while decreasing the reload times by 15%, though on the right, the custom and lightened stock options to increase manoeuvrability in ADS while lowering spread while moving and aiming. Because the Karabin only holds 10 rounds and is restricted to using clips rather than detachable mags, I tend to prefer running down the left side, giving those reload speeds a bit of a boost, just to make the rifle feel a bit more dependable on the go, helping to make up for its lack of magazine options. Though if you like to strafe around a lot to get on target, then you might prefer going down the right side instead, especially if those reloads don't really bother you too much. Last of all, we've got the recoil buffer on the bottom left, lowering vertical kick down a bit, and barrel bedding on the bottom right, reducing spread while you're standing still. Both decent choices to increase accuracy, though I usually prefer to use the recoil buffer, just to make the gun a bit more controllable against players further away, letting you tap the trigger a bit quicker while being able to stay on target easier. In conclusion, the KARABIN 1938M is generally more of a defensive rifle, optimised for taking on players over those medium ranges where you can capitalise on its higher damage and free shot kill potential. It's a very similar weapon to the BF5 statistically, and in the way it performs on the battlefield, often being a riskier thing to use with aggressive tactics within shorter sight lines due to its slower fire rate and limited magazine size. The Karabin does, however, have better recoil stats than the BF5, which might generally make it slightly easier to control, especially when firing at the gun's maximum rate against players beyond close range, potentially speeding up the kill times a bit due to you not having to wait for that recoil to reset after every shot, with vertical kick being lower, making it more stable when firing away and spamming shots out over a medium range. Unlike a lot of the other semi-auto rifles, you are limited to using clips and individual bullet reloads only, which is going to limit the gun's ability to keep you engaged in the action, with no other mag choices being available. And this is yet another thing that goes against the Karabin being an effective weapon for rushing enemy positions, and being used within those shorter ranges where multiple enemies might be present. So with all this in mind, it's generally best to keep a little bit of distance to your targets if possible, which will allow you to take advantage of the gun's strengths, while avoiding some of the other guns that are going to be much more geared up for taking you on close by. Anyway, that's it for another one folks, hope you enjoyed the guide, give me a like if you did, and subscribe for more content coming up in the future. Take it easy, and I'll be seeing you in that next one.